and the truth will come out. There's no DUI, and I'm sorry for anybody I let down. I'm sorry for, the way this whole thing. Let me do this. It's time, I need to speak, and I want everybody to understand this wasn't a DUI. The situation that happened could have been handled differently, and I apologize for everybody I did let down, and I apologize for how it all played out. But as far as everything is concerned, it'll work out how it's supposed to work out. That's all.
I struggle with anxiety. I didn't know it was anxiety back then. I'm just knowing I need to disguise it as in your mind. It's, hey, I got to do this to go here. And pretty much, before I know it, now a fundraising event or it's after a game or all these different things, it just becomes such a norm because most people don't know, I didn't grow up with the coaches that was kissing my ass, I never was hurt. I never was told that I was the best.
He sat in a barber's chair just days before everything ended. And when someone asked him how he was doing, he didn't say fine. He didn't give the answer that people in the public eye are trained to give. Instead, he paused, looked down, and said, "I've definitely had better days." He talked about something he'd been carrying his whole life, something he was struggling to accept, something that had been quietly tearing him apart from the inside. And then, less than a week later, he was gone, found slumped over in the front seat of a truck, mouth open, body twitching, in a neighborhood called Los Gatos, while the city around him went on like nothing happened. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. And now the people who loved him are sending his brain to Boston. They've hired lawyers, and the medical examiner still hasn't told us how he died. So what really happened to Aldon Smith? Welcome back to CrimeLab Report. If this is your first time here, we go deep on the cases the mainstream media wraps up in 3 minutes. We don't do surface level. We don't do speculation without facts. And we don't close a case until every question has been asked. Make sure you subscribe before we get into this, because by the end of this video, you're going to have more questions and answers. And that is not an accident. Now let's get into it. Saturday, June 13th, 2026. It starts like a good day. Aldon Smith and his close friend, Amir Shirazi, are out doing something that doesn't fit the narrative the media built around this man for over a decade. They're delivering pizzas, not to a party, not to some event, to a homeless charity called Cham Deliverance Ministry in the Bay Area. 10 Little Caesars pizzas. Smith pulled up wearing a Willis Reed throwback Knicks jersey, number 19, blue shorts, Air Jordans. He had plans to watch the Knicks play in the NBA Finals that same night. He was in a good mood. He and Shirazi had been joking, talking about life, the kind of easy conversation you have with someone you trust. Scott Wagers, the co-founder of Cham, told the San Francisco Chronicle that the visit was completely unplanned. He'd never met Smith before. But when Smith got out of that car, Wagers noticed something. He said Smith looked lethargic, tired, like something was off. He asked him, "Hey man, are you good?" They took some pictures, handed over the pizzas, and Smith got back in the truck. That's the last time anyone outside of that vehicle would see Aldon Smith alive. After leaving the charity, Shirazi and Smith returned to Shirazi's home in Los Gatos. Shirazi stepped inside his house briefly, alone, just a few minutes. And when he came back out to that truck, what he found stopped him cold. Smith was slumped over in the passenger seat, mouth open, his frame slightly twitching. Shirazi told the Chronicle he initially thought his friend had fallen asleep. Then reality hit him. He said he thought it was possibly a seizure, then maybe a massive heart attack. He tried to revive him. He called 911. He then called former 49ers running back Anthony Dixon to come help administer CPR. Everything that a person who wanted to save someone would do, he did it. Smith was rushed to Good Samaritan Hospital in San Jose and was pronounced dead at 12:46 in the afternoon. Now here's where I need you to pause with me for a second, because this detail matters. Shirazi told reporters, "We were joking about life and talking about stuff right before. He was perfectly fine an hour before. I came out, and he was basically dead in my front seat. Perfectly fine 1 hour before. Dead 60 minutes later. No altercation. No reported distress. No cry for help. Just a man sitting in a parked truck who was suddenly gone." So what does that tell us? Medically, a collapse that rapid, with body twitching involved, points to one of few things: a cardiac event, a seizure disorder, or something that entered the system and shut him down fast. And right now, the Santa Clara County Medical Examiner hasn't ruled anything out. The cause of death is still listed as pending. The manner of death, also pending, which raises the first question I need you to sit with. If this was natural causes, why is it taking this long to say so? Now, let's talk about the man himself. Because you cannot understand what happened on June 13th without understanding the weight this man had been carrying for years. Aldon Smith came out of the University of Missouri as one of the most physically gifted pass rushers this league had ever seen. The San Francisco 49ers took him 7th overall in the 2011 draft, and within 2 seasons he had already rewritten the record books. 33.5 sacks in his first 2 years, a number that still has not been touched by anyone who came after him. He was Pro Bowl. He was All-Pro. He was the kind of player that offensive coordinators lost sleep over. And then, piece by piece, it all started to fall apart. And here's what I want you to understand, because a lot of people reduce Aldon Smith's story to talented guy who threw it all away. But that's not what this is. What this really is a story about a man who was fighting something internal that he could never fully name. And that fight followed him everywhere. The first arrest came in January 2012, a DUI in Miami Beach. Charges later reduced to reckless driving, a warning sign that nobody treated as a warning sign. Then June 2012, a party at a San Jose home turns violent when gang members show up. Shots are fired. 2 people are wounded, and Aldon Smith himself is stabbed. When investigators search his home afterward, they find 5 firearms in his bedroom and closet, 3 of which are classified as illegal assault weapons under California law. He had purchased those guns in Arizona the year before, including the day before a 49ers game. 3 felony weapons charges are filed. They're later reduced to misdemeanors. But the pattern was already forming. September 2013, another DUI. This time he crashes his truck into a tree in San Jose. Marijuana and pills are found. His blood alcohol level is nearly twice the legal limit. He voluntarily checks himself into rehab, misses 5 games. The league suspends him for 9 games the following season. And then April 2014 at Los Angeles International Airport. During a routine secondary screening, Aldon Smith tells a TSA agent he has a bomb. No charges are filed. But think about that moment. Think about what is happening inside a person when they make a decision like that in public, in an airport, surrounded by cameras and law enforcement. That is not calculated behavior. That is someone unraveling. August 2015, hit and run, DUI, vandalism. 3rd DUI arrest. The 49ers release him the very next morning. The NFL suspends him indefinitely 3 months later. He won't be reinstated until 2020, in between domestic violence charges against his fiancée in 2018, a battery arrest in Louisiana in 2021 where he allegedly choked a man unconscious at a coffee shop, and then the arrest that landed him in a jail cell at a blood alcohol content of 0.288, more than 3 times the legal limit, a felony DUI causing injury. He pleaded no contest in 2023 and served 6 months before being released on probation. Now, I'm laying all of this out not to bury him. I'm laying it out because in his final interview, Aldon Smith talked about sitting in that jail cell after the last DUI and said something that I haven't been able to stop thinking about since I started researching this case. He said, "I was just sitting in the cell and I was done then. I was so disappointed in myself and where I was at mentally and physically. I was ready to be done with it." He also said, and this is a line that hit differently after everything that happened, "I never thought I was good enough." A man who broke NFL records. A man who was one of the most dominant defensive players of his generation. And he never thought he was good enough. That kind of self-perception doesn't come from nowhere. That is a wound that goes back further than football. That is something that lived inside him long before the league, long before the fame, long before any of the legal trouble started. So now I have to ask you, when his family hired those attorneys and sent his brain to Boston to be tested for CT, what are they really looking for? And does the answer change how we see everything that came before it? CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. If you follow true crime or sports cases long enough, you've heard that term before. It's a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma. And what it does to a person is not just physical. It rewires them. It causes depression, mood swings that come out of nowhere, impulsive decisions that the person themselves cannot fully explain afterward, an inability to regulate emotion, a darkness that creeps in and doesn't leave, and it can only be confirmed after death. You cannot scan for it. You cannot diagnose it while someone is still breathing. You only find it when you're looking at brain tissue under a microscope. Smith's family says he suffered numerous concussions during his NFL career. And when you think about the trajectory of his life, the escalating arrests, the substance abuse that he clearly used as a coping mechanism, the statement that he never felt good enough, the way he described struggling with something he couldn't fully put into words, you start to wonder how much of what the world called bad decisions was actually a brain in crisis. How much of it was a man trying to silence something he didn't have the language to explain. I'm not asking that to excuse anything. I'm asking it because it matters for what happens next. Because if CTE is confirmed, this case becomes something much larger than one man's death. It becomes a question about what the NFL knew, what they didn't prevent, and who is ultimately responsible when a player's brain deteriorates long after the cameras stop rolling. But here is where I have to be straight with you as a researcher. There are things about this case that don't sit completely flat for me, and I think you deserve to hear them. The cause of death is still unknown. Toxicology has not been released. The family did not hire a standard attorney. They hired Harry Daniels, bakery sellers, and Wayne Kendall, lawyers who operate in the space of systemic injustice and accountability. That is a very specific type of legal team to assemble when your loved one supposedly died of natural causes. The attorneys themselves said they intend to investigate all aspects of his death. All aspects, not the medical cause. All aspects. Then there's the timeline. Perfectly fine 1 hour before. Dead in a parked truck 60 minutes later. No witnesses to those final minutes except the one person who was there. I am not accusing Amir Shirazi of anything. The evidence does not point there. But from a pure investigative standpoint, that gap, those few minutes when Shirazi was inside the house and Smith was alone in that truck, that is the window that the medical examiner is going to be looking at very carefully. And what about the financial piece? Reports confirm Smith was struggling financially at the time of his death. He was delivering pizzas with a friend on a Saturday morning, a man who once commanded a first-round NFL contract, who broke records that still stand today, delivering pizzas. What does financial desperation do to someone who is already battling anxiety, self-worth issues, and a history of substance abuse? And who knew about that desperation? Who was around him in those final weeks? These are the questions that don't have answers yet. And until the toxicology report drops, until the CTE results come back from Boston, until the medical examiner closes his case officially, every one of those questions stays open. What I can tell you is this. On the last morning of his life, Aldon Smith woke up and chose to spend it feeding people who had nothing. He showed up to a homeless charity unannounced with 10 pizzas and a Knicks jersey, ready to watch the finals that night. That is not the portrait of a man who had given up. That is a man who was still trying, still moving forward, still showing up for something beyond himself, even when he was quietly falling apart on the inside. And that is what makes this case so heavy to sit with. Not just the unanswered questions, not just the legal history or the suspicious timeline or the lawyers and the brain being shipped to Boston. It's the fact that he was trying. Right up until the end, he was trying. So I'll leave you with this. When the toxicology results finally drop, when that medical examiner report goes public, when Boston finishes examining his brain, will the truth match the story we've been told? Or is there a chapter to this case that nobody has opened yet? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this case needs a follow-up, because I have a feeling it will, CrimeLab Report will be right here.